Good morning.
Good morning, Chuck.
Okay. All right. So we pick up on 20A. Just one second. Okay. 20A. Amar B'Yonasan. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines from the top. Amar B'Yonasan. So we've been talking about people who are particular about Tuma and what we're going to discuss right now is so people who are careful to always make sure that their clothes are tahor, but whereas there were some people who were not so concerned. So if you so the idea that is underlying what the Gemara is going to discuss is that in order to keep something in that status of being tahor to your particular and punctilious standards, you have to be focused on it. So for example, a more common idea is your hands. So the rabbis came up with this idea that your hands should always be considered tameh. Why? Because your hands, you never know where they've been. Your hands are always, you're not always focusing. So you have to wash your hands, for example, before you eat. So that removes the tuma. But this is like behind the idea of after you wash your hands for a meal, you shouldn't speak until you make the bracha on the bread, right? And the reason for that is that anything that's considered a kind of a lack of focus on your hands until you start eating means that your hands are now considered they could have gone anywhere, right? You could have been, like wiping the sweat from your brow or something like that, things that are not so clean. Unless you've been focusing on your hands since you washed them, they're considered unclean again. Okay, and the same applies to clothing. So, Amar Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar. Let's say your cloak, your coat, or your scarf, or whatever fell off your body. Amar l'chaver, and you said to your friend, "Tzali, like hand it over to me, would you?" When the son alone, he gave it to you. Tameya, it's considered tameh. Why? Because the fact that it fell off of you and you spoke to your friend and asked him to give it to you means that you lost your focus on that thing of making sure that it remains tahor. The Gemara will question a number of aspects of this. Amar Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram. Rabbi Yonasan said, what happens if, like, you go to your closet and you were planning to take out your jeans, and instead you took out your Shabbos clothes? Okay, so nitmu, then they are considered tameh, and presumably the reason is that it's not it's left like when you put it in your closet, okay, and that it's there and so on, then it's considered controlled by you, okay? But the idea that you could get them mixed up means that something went wrong here. There's some lack of control. So the lack of control or focus makes it tameh, or presumed to be tameh. Amar Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok, a third statement of this is Rabbi Elazar. Ma'aseh b'shtei nashim chaveros. There were two women who were punctilious. They were the chaver. Chavera is the feminine of chaver, which means someone who is well, let's say in this case it means he's particular about these things. So they were very particular. They went to the sauna, and they came out, and each one took the other one's robe. Okay. Rabbi Akiva, and the question came to Rabbi Akiva, the Timon, and he said, they're considered tameh again presumably because by the fact that they got them mixed up means they weren't focused on them. Roshi asks, if that's the case, let's say the waiter brings you a bread basket, right? And you've got the pretzel bread, you've got the wheat bread, you've got the whatever, and you wanted to take the wheat bread. But also instead, you picked up the barley bread instead. So would you say that that's tameh? Well, the principle seems the same, right? Like you weren't focused on it, so it lacked. If you lost your focus on it, then then it should be considered tame. But if you want to say, yeah, that's right, but I'll bring you a brisa. Let's say you have a barrel of wine, and you know there's wine in there. You think there's wine in there, but you open it up, and what do you know? It's not wine; it's oil. Tahora milatame. That's considered tahor. Okay, so in other words, as long as you had the barrel in your cellar and it was, being protected and whatever it's being like you knew it was there and you had your focus on it. So the fact that you didn't know what was in it doesn't really matter according to this brisa. So why is that the case in all these other cases we brought? Um, Ulatameh. So the Gemara says, well, okay, if you think those are similar cases, Amos Sefer, look at the end of that brisa. V'asura milecho. It says it's tahor, but you can't eat it. Am I? So why can't you eat it? Right? The fact that you can't eat it or drink it in this case would indicate that it means it's tameh. So what's going on here? Amar Yirmiyah says, Omer shemartia midavar hamatama, where you can say to yourself, or you can testify, I kept it from being contacting from it being in contact with something tummy below me davar apostle, but I wasn't focusing on something that would make it pasul. Pasul means like invalid or something like that. So what's the difference between these two? So it appears that the difference is whether it's a degree that can make, if it's tame, it can transfer the tuma to something else it comes in contact with or not, right? So there's the different levels of tuma. At some level, something can become tame itself, but it doesn't transfer that tuma to another thing that it comes in contact with. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says, okay, what must be going on here is you can't eat the thing because it itself is tame, but the first statement of the brisa was it doesn't make other things tame. Okay, so that makes sense. When we equal in the Tirusal Apolga, but the Gemara says, well, that's fine as far as it goes, but we're talking about the question of whether you were focused on keeping it clean, right? Like, who does that, right? Who keeps it from becoming tame in one way and not in another way? It's binary. Either you're keeping it from becoming tame or you're not. So Gemara says, yes, actually there is such a concept. Tanya, we have a brisa. Hoshik yada basal. You put your hand into a basket of stuff, of fruit, whatever. The basket's on your shoulder. There's a scoop in the basket. And you were focusing on keeping the figs tahar, right? But you didn't remember that there's a scoop in there, so you weren't focused on the scoop. So everything's in one basket, but you are only concerned about the figs, the fruit, whatever's in there. So hasal tahar v'amagrefa tmeya. Then the rule is that the basket of figs is tahar, but the scoop is not, because it wasn't part of your focus, right? So this indicates, according to this view of the Gemara, that you can kind of have a half. Everything was in the basket together, right? But you can have a partial, like only what you were thinking about is considered preserved in its state. So, and the Gemara analyzes this a little further. Hasal tahar, the basket is tahar. Tatami amagrefa lasal. Wait a second. If you're going to tell me that the scoop is tame, so the scoop makes everything in the basket tame because it's in the basket, right? So the Gemara answers, Ein kli matame kli. One utensil can't make another utensil tame, right? You can only transfer to food, right? Once you get to a certain level of tuma, it's only food that's affected, right? So this level of tuma of the scoop cannot be transferred to the basket itself. Okay, well that's fine, but maybe the figs should become tame because they're food. Amar Ravina. Ravina says b'yomer. It's talking about when you're saying shemarti midavar shematamo v'lo midavar aposla. So it must be referring to a case where you said, yeah, you know what? I was focused on the basket from something that would make it tame itself, but not something that will allow it to transfer tuma. Okay, so that proves that you can say that, right? So in other words, we brought this brisa to demonstrate the idea that you can be guarding this basket only to the extent of it becoming tame to such a degree that it will make something else tame. But you weren't concerned about just becoming tame to a degree that it can't transfer it further. So mikoma koma kasha. So that brings us back to the question, right? Like the case of the barrel of wine that turns out to be oil, right? How come? Like, what does it mean to say that you can that it's not tame, but it can't be eaten? Why can't it be eaten if it's not tame? The ode, and here's another difficulty. Most of Rabbi Baravua asked, Masavi Shachas, there was a woman, Shabbos Lifnei Rabbi Yishmael, she came to Rabbi Yishmael, V'yamar she said, Rabbi, Begazeh Araktiv B'tara, I wove this shirt, while I was tahor, V'lo hayabelivi l'shamra b'tara, but, like, I know that, I know that, like, I think back to what happened. So during the time that I was weaving this shirt, I wasn't focusing on keeping it tahor, but nonetheless, I now remember that nothing happened during that time that I was working on it that could have made it tameh. Okay, so at the time I didn't have this focus, and yet I can say that it never came into contact with anything tameh. What should I do? So Rabbi Shmuel kind of cross-examined her. Amrlo, she said to him, Rabbi, teach nida mashcha imi b'chavel. There was another person involved, and she was a nida. She was in the state of tuma. And you know what? Now that you've asked me, now that I think of it, I remember that that this other woman helped me, and I know that she was tameh. Amar Rishmal, so Rishmal says, Kama Gedolim Divrei Chachamim. How great are the words of the sages? Shayu Omrim, they would say, Belibo l'shamar tahor and belibo l'shamar tameh. They were wise to say that you can't think back and remember. Like it only works to keep something tahor if you are focused on, yes, I'm going to keep this tahor. Then that would have prevented her, had she been doing so, that would have prevented her from allowing this other person who was tameh to cooperate, to work with her. But thinking back, it didn't occur to her at first that this person was tameh. Shuv Masabi Shacha Shabbos Lifnei Rabbi Yishmael, and there was another case. So another woman came to Rabbi Yishmael. Amar Rabbi, she said, Ma pazu araktia b'tara. I wove this tablecloth while I was tahor. Lo hayabli b'lishamar. Same case. I didn't focus at the time on keeping it tahor. Rabbi Yishmael bodka. Amrlo, and while he was asking her questions about it, she said to him, Rabbi Nima Nifsikali, there was a thread that I was using, there was in my work, and it broke, it tore. And so I tied it using my mouth. So like, I guess I held one end in my mouth while I repaired it, whatever. I'm not sure how this all works, but, and so what's the problem of putting it in her mouth? Okay. So what she meant was that before while she was just getting started, this happened. Okay. And she was a nida at the time. She was tameh at the time. And so you have to remember that in order for a piece of cloth to become tameh, it has to be a certain minimum size, right? So here we're just getting started. It's not the minimum size. If the thread becomes tameh, it's not a problem, right? But by having put it in her mouth, it could have become wet with her saliva, okay? And then as it got bigger, once it got big enough, it could still be wet. And she was a nida at the time, right? Now, maybe when it got big enough, she was no longer tameh, right? She had gone to the mikvah, whatever, but the saliva that might still be on it was still tameh. Okay, and now it's big enough to acquire that tumah. So Rabbi Shmuel said, look how great are the words of the sages. That like, look how, it really is important to focus at the time. That is really the determining factor because here's another case where like you come and tell me afterwards, oh, nothing happened. I wasn't focusing at the time, but nothing could have happened during the process. And it turns out not so, right? Something that did happen that could have made it tameh. So going back to our original case of the coat that falls off a person's shoulders and somebody else picks it up for you, right? But like, why the fact that it fell off your body doesn't mean that you weren't focused on it anymore. Like it was right there in front of you, right? So what's this all about? Bishlam Rebbe Lazar ben Sada, according to Rebbe Lazar, like that's the case of the two women who went to the sauna and then they took each other's robe afterwards. So kol achos v'achos omeres, each one can say, Chaverti Eshes Hamaretz, this the other woman that I went with, she's particular. Omascha da tamina. Oh, sorry, Chaverti Eshes Hamaretz. Each one could say, you know what, I don't really trust this other person. Like I'm good, I'm focusing on my clothes and I'm good. But this other woman that I went with, she's not a chaver, she's an amaretz. She's a regular person who's not so particular. So the fact that she wasn't focusing, she doesn't focus on keeping something to her. So therefore, I took her coat or her robe so that I have to consider it tame. So that makes sense. That to consider the garments tame, right? Where Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram name, and the case of Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram, who went to his closet and took out the wrong shirt, and the shirt that he didn't intend, came in the Kalim de Shabbos Avi Lahu Shimur Tzvei, because usually you're more careful with your Shabbos clothes, right? That you put them on the hanger properly, you make sure the crease is right, you take better care of them. Masat datim minayu. So by like if you took your shot, if you were intending to take your jeans and you took your Shabbos pants out, it means you weren't paying enough attention, right? Like you should have noticed, right? So that indicates that you weren't really focused on it. That's why we say they're time. What about the other case of the person who just dropped his scarf on the floor, right? Navi Lushim would be like you were there the whole time, so somebody else picked it up. Like, so what? You were still focused on your scarf, right? The fact that it fell on the floor and you asked somebody else to pick it up for you, you're still focused on, oh, is anything happening here that could make it tame? And if nothing is happening that could make it tame, then what's the problem? Why do we say it's tame? Rabbi Yochanan answers, the rule is you can only focus on something that's under your control. Once somebody else picks it up, you can be watching all you want, but that doesn't count as focused on keeping it tahor, because it's under someone else's control. Okay, so that's just a rule of what's required for this focus. So Gemara says, well, oh, really? Is that the case? Well, Tanya, I'll show you a brisa. Let's say you hire a donkey driver, okay, or you hurt workers or whatever, and they're carrying stuff for you, like and they're tahar. Even though you wandered off, they wandered off, you're separated from them, like you've got like a caravan, and listen, I got to take this over to the other side of the town. Can you drive it there for me, right? In your truck, and I'll follow in my car. So even though you get separated, right, it's still considered under your control. Taharas of taharas, it's still considered under your control and under your focus, and it remains tahar. Okay, so that indicates that even if someone else has it, you can still be focused on keeping it tahar. But if he said to them, if he said, you guys go ahead, I'll come later, right? Then Kevin Shini's Almoin of Mehen Taharas of Tameos. Then it's not under your focus anymore. So if you say, let's go together, and you get separated, that's considered okay. That it's under your control and under your focus. It's only if you say, you go ahead and I'll come later and meet you there, that's not under your control. But the fact is that if in the first case, if you get separated, it's under someone else's control, it's still considered tahor, right? So again, come back to the question of the guy whose scarf fell off just because somebody else picked it up. Why does that remove your focus? What's the difference between these two cases? And also, what's the difference between whether I say to you, I'll meet you there, or whether we go together and get separated? What's the difference there also? Like it should seem like those should be the same case, because it's not under your direct observation and control. Rav Yitzchak answers, the first case where you say, let's go together, is when like you take precautions. You say, okay, before we go, you're going to the mikvah. Okay, we'll make sure everything is tahor. Okay, then and then so then the Gemara says, "Achi seifanami." What? But the Brisa is bringing you two cases. Why are you assuming that the second case is not where you told them to go to the mikveh first? The answer is ein amar tzmakpid al maga chavero, because an amharitz, meaning an ordinary person, is not particular about things in general. So even if I made you go to the mikveh first, they think that I'm just being crazy, right? I'm being too firm. And so the fact that I mean, it's not answering the question directly, but what it seems to mean is that if I say we're going together, if I say we're going together and I make you go to the mikveh, then you'll be careful. But if I say I'm making you go to the mikveh and then I'll meet you there, they'll just think, oh, this guy's just like over the top crazy.
I know I'm coming in. Martin told me that already. Right. The 10th. Oh no, I'll be in Florida. I'm going to Florida. I'm going to Florida. Right, but I'll be back. I'll be back for the 23rd. That's for sure. No, I'm going because I'm just going for a week, the 3rd through the 10th. Only because of someone I worked with is having a 80th birthday party, so I want to be there. Right. Thursday, right. And I'll be back on the 10th. But I believe so. You know, I haven't spoken to Maria in quite some time. Marie, not Ferrer, Maria, you know, I forget. Maria D'Amelio, right, that's it. Yeah, call her.
Okay, so we're still trying to work out, like, you know, this case, this Brisa seems to be weird, because like, what's the difference? We're still trying to work out what's the difference between getting separated or saying in advance that we're going to be separated. So Gemara says, where I could, like, where they're afraid that I might take a shortcut or something. You know, they're going on the main road, and so they're on their own. But even though we got separated, they're thinking, oh, you know why we got separated? He took a shortcut and he's going to be here any second, right? So they'll be more careful. So Gemara says, Yahi Seifanami. So, okay, you could say that about the case where I originally said to you, go ahead and I'll follow you. So Gemara answers, since I said to you, I'll meet you there, right? So they're pretty sure that they're leaving now. I'm leaving later. They're pretty sure they're going to get there first, so they're not. They aren't concerned with my opinion about whether they should stay tahor. And that is the end of the second chapter. I think that rather than start the new Mishnah, since tomorrow's daf is pretty short, I'll let David pick it up from the Mishnah, which is like a whole new topic, and he should be able to cover at the end of 20 and 21 tomorrow.
Thank you, Dov.
All right, have a good day.
Yeah, have a good day.
When are you going to Florida?
I'm leaving Thursday and I'll be back in a week. I'm going, a friend I worked with is having an 80th birthday party.
Very
So
nice. Okay.
I said that it's only right to be there for that.
Oh, that'd be nice. Well, Zoom works in Florida too, so if you
Yeah,
have the opportunity.
I'll be on Zoom.
Okay.
So I'll see you or hear you then.
Have a great trip.
Bye-bye.